you also employed at the time this incident when it occurred in 2020?
Yes.
Fair to say you've been employed all your adult life?
Yes, I have.
And what does your wife do for a living?
She's a driver. She's a bus driver.
And was she employed at the time of this incident in April?
Yes, she was.
Are you also involved in coaching athletics?
Yes, I am. I coach high school sports and also done youth sports.
Where do you currently coach?
I coach at Crystal House Manual. Well, it's actually Crystal House now, high school.
And I think you mentioned you also coach youth leagues?
Yes. I established in 2000. I established my own youth teams, part of the PAL Youth League.
Okay. Can you explain briefly to the jury what PAL is?
The PAL is the Police Athletic League. But the main focus is to give the youth somewhere to do their sports and have mentors.
Did your sons assist you in coaching?
Yes, they did.
Does that include Elliahs?
Yes.
Did Elliahs also specifically assist you in coaching in the PAL league?
Yes, in the PAL league.
And throughout Elias's young life and through high school and college, did he play football?
Yes, he did.
Did your son Deontay also play as well?
Yes, sir, he did.
When your sons were younger, did you have a home on Guilford Street?
Yes, I had a home on Guilford Street. Yes, sir.
How old were your sons when you were living there?
They were. Elias at the time was like 4, or maybe 5. Deontay was 4, and little Larry was 7.
How long did you live there?
We stayed there for about 10 years.
And can you just briefly describe for the jury what that neighborhood was like?
When I moved into the neighborhood was pretty well abandoned, drug infested with gangs. So, I had established the safe haven for a lot of the kids in the neighborhood at my house, and ended up establishing a football team to mentor the kids in the neighborhood.
Where did Elliahs attend? Did he attend preschool?
Yes.
Where did he attend preschool?
He started at what's called Kingsley Terrace Preschool, and then went to St. Joseph Park.
Okay. And what can you briefly describe what you did to make sure? Well, let me ask you this: prior to this incident, had your son Elliahs ever been arrested?
No, never in any trouble. Never been arrested. Never. All I ever known him to ever get was like a speeding ticket for going 5 miles over the speed limit. That was about it.
Can you describe just briefly to the jury what you and your wife did to assure that your son Elliahs and your other sons didn't get into trouble in that neighborhood in Guilford?
We took in, like I said, I turned my house into a safe haven for all the kids, and then that's when I established the youth team. So I would pick up all the kids in the neighborhood along with the sister of my brothers, and we would take them to the park, and that's where we would go and practice and keep them out of trouble, and then I would drop them back off at home. By that time, it would be time for them to eat and go and do their homework and go to sleep.
Were both you and your wife actively involved in the schools that Elliahs attended?
Yes.
And you mentioned that the preschool was Kingsley Terrace?
Yes.
And when did your son begin playing football? Like your son Elliahs?
Elias started playing football when he was 5.5, 6 years old.
And was this full contact football?
It was full contact football, yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as Defendant's Exhibit D. Mr. Dorsey, did you take a look at that?
Yes.
Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of what is in that photo?
Yes, that's Elias and Deontay both. Elias in there.
Defense moves to admit.
Defendant's Exhibit D.
No objection, Judge.
Should be admitted without objection.
Mr. Dorsey, can you see that photo?
Yes.
Okay. And in this photo, is your son Elliahs depicted?
Yes, he is sitting Indian style. He is actually in the middle.
So, if you, that is a touch screen there. If you put your finger and draw a circle around Elliahs. Okay. And is your son Deontay also there?
Yes.
Can you go ahead and try touch screen, put a circle around where Deontay is? And this would have been, how old would Elliahs have been in this photo?
Like I said, he just turned 6.
Okay. So he was just in kindergarten?
Yeah.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as Defendant's Exhibit E. You recognize that?
Yes.
You recognize that as a photo of your son Elliahs?
Yes.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of him at that time?
Yes, it is.
Move to admit Defendant's Exhibit E.
No objection.
Should be admitted without objection.
Mr. Dorsey, I'm going to show you, moving to publish E. And you identified this as your son Elliahs?
Yes, sir.
And was he 5 or 6 years old in this photo?
Yeah, he was about 5.
And this would have been about the time that he began playing football as depicted in that earlier exhibit.
Yes.
Where did your son Elliahs attend grammar school?
He went to school, IPS School 14.
Where did your son Deontay attend grammar school?
IPS School 14.
And let me back up a little bit and ask you a couple of questions about Elliahs' birth. Were there any complications with regard to his birth?
Yes. During the pregnancy, my wife had went outside to cut the grass when she wasn't supposed to, and just so happened she was working at the state at that time, and her fallopian tube burst. And at some point, I lost both of them on the table, but they brought them both back.
Was there also, when Elliahs was young, a head injury that he suffered?
Yeah, we stayed with her mother, and we stayed downstairs and in the basement, and he tried climbing out of his crib. And when he climbed out the crib, he hit his head onto the floor, which was tile over concrete.
Was he hospitalized for that?
Yeah, he was in there for a couple of days.
You stated that both he and Deontay attended IPS 14?
Yes.
And when he was at IPS 14, was he continuing to play football?
Yes.
And again, was that full contact football?
Yes, sir, it was.
Were you and your wife actively involved in the school activities at IPS 14?
Yes, yes.
Where did Elliahs attend junior high?
He attended Shortridge Junior High School, and then also went to Marshall.
And were there some circumstances in which he was held back in the 8th grade?
Yeah, because of grades.
Okay. So he repeated the 8th grade.
Yeah, they. I would have the teachers wanted to go ahead and move him on, but I felt like no, he's not ready, so keep him back. So kept him back.
From that point on, were he and Deontay basically in the same grade?
They were in the same grade, yes.
Same grade at Shortridge?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you with the mark for identification as Attendance Exhibit F. Mr. Dorsey, do you recognize Attendance Exhibit F?
Yes, I do.
And is what's depicted in Defendant's Exhibit F a fair and accurate representation of what happened when that photo was taken?
Yes, it is.
Move to admit Defendant's Exhibit F.
No objection.
Sure. F admitted without objection.
And move to publish, Judge.
You may.
And Mr. Dorsey, can you explain to the jurors what is depicted in Defendant's Exhibit F?
Okay, this is the picture of the Shortridge High School, Shortridge Middle School team championship photo when they won the 2007 IPSAC Middle School Championship.
And both your sons, Elliahs and Deontay, were on that team.
Yes, they were.
And there is an inset there on the left-hand side of Defendant's F. Does that depict your sons and you and your wife?
Yes, it is.
And you draw a circle around which of the two there is Elliahs.
Elias is right here.
And I'm assuming Deontay would be.
Deontay, and there's myself and my wife.
Thank you. Where did your son attend high school?
He went to IPS Arlington High School.
Did Deontay also attend? Arlington?
Yes, he did.
So at this point, they're both in the same grade.
They're in the same grade, yes.
Did they both play football?
Yes, they did. Both of them.
Did they both play varsity football
All
all 4 years?
4 years.
What position did Elliahs play?
He played middle linebacker.
Can you explain for the jury what's involved in that position?
The middle linebacker's position is to basically stop the run. So he would always have to go, sometimes blitz, and you're going against guys that weigh 200, 300 pounds. So he'd have to just stuff his head in there and try to stop the run, or sometimes we didn't do a temper to, so he really didn't go in the pass because he wasn't really good at going back in the pass, so it was always forward motion.
Did he have a nickname?
I gave him a nickname he hated, but I called him E-Dog. He hated it.
Did he have a nickname after Ray Lewis?
No, not really.
And
Although that was his favorite guy, he thought he was him.
so you were coaching at Arlington, correct?
Yes.
Were you the head coach at Arlington at that time?
No, I was the offense line, defense line coach.
And can you, at that time, fair to say Elliahs was at Arlington was from 2009 to 2012? Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
What were the concussion protocols at Arlington at that time? Were they similar to the concussion protocols?
No, not at that time. It really wasn't concussion. It was sort of like it was back. The plays called just rung the bell. So it really wasn't big on it. But however, there was guys that had concussions, and when they would get them, they would try to just walk away from the coaches or try to go in another direction.
If you were aware had any awareness that Elliahs or Deontay had been seriously injured, would you have taken them?
I would have taken their helmet. Yeah.
I mean, based upon your experience with them and playing, would they want to be taken out of the game?
No, they would go in the other direction. If they had anything wrong, it could be, you know, a concussion, or if they're hurt their shoulder or something like that. You walk towards them, they go in the other direction. You try to go back down next to them, they walk in the other direction, because they did not want to be pulled out the game.
So was the kind of the philosophy was just the emphasis on playing through any injury?
Yeah, I'll play through it. I'm okay, I'll play through it.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as Defendant's Exhibit G. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Is that photo a fair and accurate representation of what is depicted in the photo?
Yes, it is.
Would you admit Defendant's Exhibit G?
No objection.
Should G admitted without objection?
Move to publish. And Mr. Dorsey, do you see Defendant's Exhibit G?
Yes, I do.
What, explain to the jury what is depicted in Defendant's Exhibit G.
In this picture right here is the Spartan football camp, which is where they went to Michigan State, and they stayed there for about 4 days, and the coaches took and coached them up on their positions.
This was in 2010, correct?
Yes, it was.
So this would have been maybe Elias's sophomore year?
His sophomore year.
And then is it correct, if I haven't asked you this already, that Elliahs and Deontay both started varsity all 4 years?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as Defendant's Exhibit I. You recognize I.
Yes, I do.
Is that a very accurate representation of what's depicted in I?
Yes, it is.
Move to admit Defendant's I.
No objection.
Shall I admit it without objection?
Move to publish I. Mr. Dorsey, could you describe for the jury what is depicted in Defendant's I?
That's a picture where we took individual pictures in front of our Arlington, I guess you could say our mascot that we had. So every kid took a picture, right? That set right before the locker room.
And is that is a photo of Elliahs, correct?
Yes, it is.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as Defendant's Exhibit J. You recognize J?
Yes, I do.
And is that a fair and accurate representation of what is depicted in Defendant's J?
Yes, it is.
Move to admit Defendant's J.
No objection.
Should G admitted without objection?
Move to publish J. And Mr. Dorsey, can you describe to the jury what is depicted in Defendant's Exhibit J?
That right there is his Arlington letter. You see the two footballs. First football would have been his freshman year. Second football, sophomore year. Then you got the letter, and then you got the you see the stripe there for the senior year.
Show you what's been marked for identification of Defendant's Exhibit K. Do you recognize K?
Yes, I do.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of what is in Defendant's Exhibit K?
Yes, it is.
Move to admit K.
No objection.
Should K admitted without objection?
explain to the jury what is depicted?
That's a photo of his senior year, the graduation, one graduation picture there. That's the prestige copy.
After graduating from high school, where did your son attend college?
Yes, he did.
Where did he attend college?
North Manchester.
And did he play football?
Yes, he did.
And when Elliahs graduated from college, at that point, was he able to get into the college? Or, I'm sorry, when Elliahs graduated from high school, was he able to get into the college that he wanted?
He had to go to Ivy Tech to get some refresher courses for a year, and then he moved on to college.
Okay. So when he graduated, initially his grades weren't good enough.
They weren't good enough to get him into the college he wanted to go to, so
And he attended Ivy Tech.
he went to Ivy Tech, yes.
During that time, was he also working?
He was working and he was coaching.
Do you recall what he was doing at that time in terms of work?
At that time, he was, I'm not sure what he was doing, where he was working. He was working, I'm trying to think where he was at.
But he was working, attending college?
Yeah, he was working,
Ivy
attending
Tech,
college,
And
yeah.
then also assisting you in coaching?
Yeah,
Was he assisting you in coaching the youth leagues?
the youth leagues and the high school.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification of the defendant's exhibit L. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And is that a fair and accurate representation of what's in L?
Yes, it is.
Move to exhibit L.
No objection.
Show L admitted without objection.
Move to publish L. And Mr. Dorsey, can you describe for the jury what is in L?
That's Elliahs walking off of the field. I believe they just had a little timeout. That's his team out there in the red. They're over at the Tibbs Field, which is over at the Old Central State, playing a game.
And I'm sorry, this is when he was coaching youth league?
Yes, he was coaching youth.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as defendant's exhibit M. Do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
Is that a fair and accurate representation other than the photo of the juvenile's face? Or other than that, is that a fair and accurate representation?
Yes, it is.
Move to admit M.
No objection.
Show M admitted without objection.
And moving to publish that. Can you describe what is depicted in that?
That picture right there there was a community day that was in the neighborhood, and they were having a street ball, curveball tournament. We took the football team there to be involved in the community day.
Can you explain to the jurors what community day is?
So that's when the community gets together, ride together, and just pretty much try to, have a good time, and everybody meets everybody, and just, a lot of events that's going on.
And is it basically a way for the people involved in, for example, PAL to reach out and participate?
Participate, yes, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
for example, PAL, the police would be involved in reaching out to the community?
They reach out to the community, firefighters would reach out to the community, just to get to know everybody, Let them know that, we're here, we're not monsters.
And Elliahs regularly participated in those things?
Yes,
So Elliahs regularly participated and supported those outreach by IMPD and the fire.
And by the firefighters, yes, all the time.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as defendant's exhibit. And it's a flash drive. Have you had a chance to view the contents of this flash drive?
Yes, sir, I have.
And the contents of this flash drive are very accurate representation of what was figured in it.
Yes, sir, it was.
And basically what we've been talking about in these photos, this would have been the time frame when Elliahs was participating in the youth league.
The youth league, yes.
And he participated in the youth leagues after he graduated from high school.
After he graduated, he done it before he graduated, after he graduated also.
And he basically continued to do that almost up to
All the way
this
up,
incident.
all the way up to the incident, up to the COVID.
I'm going to move to admit defendant's exhibit and judge.
Judge, the state doesn't have any objection with the condition that, is there a date that this is involved? So we need to know what it accurately reflects, the time period.
For purposes of this, would this have occurred after he graduated from high school?
After he graduated high school.
So it would have been after he graduated from high school and prior to going
Prior to going to Wilmington, yes.
So it would have been between the time frame between 2012 and 2016.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, no objection.
Should be admitted without objection.
Move to publish and
You
please.
may.
And same thing on offense too, alright? When you guys are running the football, hey, and same thing on offense too, alright? When you guys are running the football, hey, you're gonna full team every single play. Not stop blocking, don't stop tackling, don't stop running until that whistle is blown. Does everybody understand that? Hey, it's game time. Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Let's go. You go first, then I'll six. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go.
And Mr. Dorsey, again, I just want to be clear, the photos that we've been showing, particularly about Elliahs coaching in the youth leagues and the PAL leagues, this would have been, primary period of time would have been the period of time after graduating from high school but before going to work.
Yes.
And so this would have been the period of time in which he was attending Ivy Tech,
He was attending Ivy Tech, yeah.
basically to get his grades up.
Right.
To eventually attend college at Wilmington.
Yes.
And then also, at that time, he was working as well.
Yes, he was.
Was he living with you and your wife at that time?
Yes, he was.
I'm going to show you what's been previously admitted as State's Exhibit 227. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And do you recognize that as the trunk of your son Elliahs' car?
Yes, I do.
I'm showing 227 to the jury, and you did identify this as the trunk of your son son Elliahs' car. This is the condition of Elliahs' car when he was arrested on April 9th of 2020. There are what appear to be some large boxes of snacks in the trunk of his cars.
Right.
Based upon what you know of your son and being involved in coaching, particularly in the youth league, having seen him coach in the youth league, having seen him interact with those young kids that he was coaching, do you know why he would have had those snacks in the trunk of his car?
Yes, he had those snacks in the trunk of his car. So after the game, after they got done playing, he would always hand out snacks to the team, give them something to, for the effort they put forth on the field. And also they, had something to drink as well.
And is that something that basically you would commonly do when you were coaching?
Yeah, all the time. I always wanted to keep the kids encouraged, and then sometimes the day would be a long day, and there's some kids really didn't have food at home, haven't had anything to eat, so every time prior to that we'll go and get the kids something to eat and then feed them afterwards, just so, make sure they had something on their stomach.
So, basically, Elliahs kind of learned this interaction from you.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Basically modeled that from you.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Judge, you had a stipulation. Judge, we have a stipulation with regard to phone records in this case. And I'd like to read that to the jury at this time.
Would that be defendant O?
This will be defendant's yes, Judge.
And Mr. Beeson, is that correct? There is a stipulation between the parties?
That's right, Judge.
All right, so we show O admitted by stipulation of the parties. Again, ladies and gentlemen, as with all other stipulations, to consider the matters contained within O as being conclusively proven. Again, the O is an exhibit that will be entered into the record, so you will actually have a copy of the document when you go back to the deliberations. You may read.
Thank you, Judge. This is defendant's O, which is a stipulation of the parties. The defendant by counsel Ray Casanova and Dina Martin in the state of Indiana by Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Robert Beetson agree and stipulate to the following facts regarding defendant's Exhibit P. Defendant's Exhibit P is a copy of the Sprint T-Mobile phone records for 317-205-1786 for April 9th of 2020. These records have been certified by Jackie Borland, Specialist Subpoena Compliance Officer for Sprint T-Mobile as made at or near the time of the occurrence of the matters set forth in the records, by or from, transmitted by a person with knowledge of those matters, kept in the course of the regularly conducted business activities of Sprint T-Mobile, and made by the regularly conducted business activities of Sprint T-Mobile as a regular practice. The subscriber for 317-205-1786 was the defendant Elliahs Dorsey. The communications made through NEID switches 428, 542, 547, 553 are listed in Central Standard Time. And all communications made through switch NEID
pursuant to the stipulation.
Correct, Judge.
Is that correct, Stain?
Yes, Judge.
So we show P admitted pursuant to a stipulation of the parties.
Mr. Dorsey, I'm going to show you what's now been marked for identification, Defendant's Exhibit Q. This is a copy of the phone records that have just been admitted as Defendant's Exhibit Q. They are for April 9th of 2020. And at that time, what was your phone number?
317-427-8432.
And your son's number was 317-205-1786?
Yes.
And on this record, it has the contact you had with your son on the day of 4/9/20 highlighted. Would this, in your opinion, assist the jury in understanding the contact you had with your son that day?
Yes, it would.
Move to admit Defendant's Exhibit Q as demonstrative evidence.
No objection.
We show Q admitted without objection.
And move to publish.
Okay.
Before I ask some questions about Q, Mr. Dorsey, in the weeks leading up to this incident, did you begin to notice any changes in your son?
Yes, I did. I noticed that he wasn't the same. He had like blind stares, twisting his hair, just things out the norm.
And let me back up a little bit. At some point, your son was accepted into college at Wilmington, is that correct?
Yes, he was.
And was this in 2015?
Yes.
And can you explain for the jury what you did to help your son move out to Wilmington? Wilmington, Ohio, is that correct?
Yeah, Wilmington, Ohio. Him and I went down. Once he got admitted, first we had to, interview. He got interviewed by the department head. They went ahead and accepted him. We went out to get him into college. However, he got there. He had they had like this big bill that had to be due for a dorm to stay in the dorm, which I didn't have the money to stay in the dorm. So by him being the age he was, because he had transferred, since he had already went to Ivy Tech and was considered a freshman. So I then put him up in a hotel for 2 weeks. When he stayed in the hotel, that same day I went out and found him an apartment to stay in. So he eventually found an apartment for him to stay in.
And when he was at Wilmington, did he play football?
Yes, he did.
And how long did he stay at Wilmington?
He was there for about, it was 2 years.
And eventually, did he have to leave Wilmington because of poor grades?
Because of the grades, he had to maintain a certain GPA to stay into that program, which was nationally ranked. So, and I guess he was having issues with one of the classes, and he didn't uphold that grade.
But is it fair to say you understood it had something to do with grades, but you weren't entirely clear why?
Right.
He left Wilmington.
Right, exactly.
And when he was at Wilmington, he went there to play football, is that correct?
Right. Well, he went there to play football and then get into the program.
The athletic training
The athletic training program.
Were you aware that at some point while he was at Wilmington, he stopped playing football?
No, I didn't know he stopped playing. No, I had no idea he stopped. So.
And when he returned from Wilmington, this would have been in 2016.
Right.
When he got back from Wilmington, did he stay with you and your wife?
Yes, he stayed with me. Yeah.
Did he work during that time?
Yes, he did.
And did he have several different jobs?
He worked with me for McKesson. He was delivering pharmaceuticals.
And did he also work for True Green?
True Green also. Yeah, he was doing grass.
And just prior to this incident, had he been working?
Yes.
And do you know the circumstances under which he was laid off?
He was laid off because my understanding is the gentleman that wasn't supposed to be on one of the forklifts jumped on the forklift. Then he hit the main fire line and just flooded the whole building. So.
And was this basically kind of right before COVID?
Right before COVID, yes.
So at the time of this incident, your son wasn't actually working, but he had been working just shortly before.
He had been working, yeah, he had been working. He had been calling and checking to see if they were getting themselves back together and get the business back up and going.
Did you know Bianca Davis?
Yes, I did.
And can you explain to the jurors who Bianca Davis is?
That was Elliahs' girlfriend.
And how long had Elliahs and Bianca known each other?
They've known each other since, it was from 2012. They met in a CLD program.
And what is CLD?
A Center for Leadership Development. So that's a program for the high school students. I guess it's giving them a sense of business.
And I mean, you basically understood them to be boyfriend and girlfriend, is that correct?
Yeah. I thought they'd be a married couple, really.
So you understood their relationship to be close.
Yes.
Were you aware when this incident occurred that their relationship had ended?
No, I had no idea.
I mean, fair to say at this point, Elliahs is getting a little older, so you're not quite as involved in his day-to-day life.
Right, exactly. You know, sometimes it's kind of like back off, and then they don't tell you everything.
But obviously, you did know as much about Elliahs at this point than you did, for example, when he was in high school at Wilmington,
Right.
high school at Arlington,
Right.
and immediately after.
Right, yeah.
And you stated that you began to notice some changes in Elliahs in the week or two or more prior to this incident.
Right, yes.
And I think one of the changes you noticed is some changes in his demeanor.
His demeanor, yeah.
Was he also expressing to you some concerns about his safety?
Yes, he had concerns about his safety. He had concerns about my safety. He felt like somebody was out to kill him. Was out to kill the family, you know, and it was like, I'm not sure where all this was coming from, but it just came up all of a sudden.
This is basically what's going on in the lead-in to the incident that occurred on April 9th.
Yes.
And now going back to the demonstrative evidence defendant's cue. On the day of the incident, did you receive some information about your son? I'm just asking you yes or no if you received some information about your son.
Yes.
And based upon that information, did that concern you enough that you called your son?
Yes.
And in defendant's cue, which is a copy of Mr. Dorsey's phone records, the first highlighted call, the calling number is 317-427-8432, which is your number, correct?
Yes.
And it's calling your son's number, 317-205-1786.
Yes.
And for the jury, the NEID is 428, so this call is in Central Time. So this call was made at 12:18:56 Indiana time. So about 20 after 12 is the is when you first called your son that day.
Right.
And when you called your son that day, was it because you had some concerns of what may have been going on in an apartment he was at?
Yeah, or just concern for him, exactly.
And during this call, I mean, basically, were you just asking him to leave the apartment?
Yeah, I was trying to get him to leave, trying to just say things to him to get him to go home, just get out of the apartment, period.
And when you told him that, what was his response?
He's like, no, Dad, man, I can't go home, man. Somebody's out to kill us. You gotta watch going on too. Somebody's out to kill you too. You know.
So basically, was he expressing to you that he didn't want to leave the apartment because he felt if he left the apartment, he would be killed?
He'd be killed, yeah.
I mean, was that concerning to you?
Yeah, it really was. Yeah.
And, I mean, was this kind of consistent with the concerning behavior he had been demonstrating for
Earlier.
weeks before?
Yeah. It's like very annoying.
At this time, were you at work?
Yes, I was.
And then, were you continuing to, and I'm going to show you now, that first call was on page 3 of defendant's queue. I'm going to show you page 4 of defendant's queue, if you can see that. Did you call him back repeatedly?
Yeah, constantly try to get in touch with him.
Okay. Were there some calls that didn't go through?
Right, some didn't go through. Actually, I didn't really even get a chance to talk to them because they would go to voicemail, you know, they would ring, so I just kept dialing, trying to get in touch with them.
So, in this first call, these are all, on this page, there are 2, 5, 6, 11, 12, 13 calls, all made by you to his number, is that correct?
Yes.
And that first call back was at, this is NEB 428, so that's Central Time, 13, it would be 14:35:42, which would be 2:35:42. So you're basically constantly calling him, basically to see if you can address the situation.
Yeah, address the situation, try to get him to tried everything, try to get him to go home.
At some point, do you actually go to the scene?
Yes, I do.
And, I mean, did you have to make arrangements for work before you could go to the scene?
Yeah, I talked to my boss and just told him I had to leave. It's an emergency situation, and he said, go ahead and go. So.
When you arrived at the scene, what did you see?
Just police everywhere.
Were you in contact with your wife?
Yeah, she had called me prior to me going to the scene.
And I'm going to show you what's now been marked for identification as Defendant's Exhibit R. Mr. Dorsey, at the time of this incident, did you know your wife's phone number?
Yes, it was 250-8090 or 289-8090.
So it's 289-4.
44080. That's it. Yeah.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as Defendant's Exhibit R, which are the phone records for your son, Elliahs, on the date of 4/9/2020. They show highlighted the calls exchanged between your wife and your son's phone number. Would this assist, do you believe this would assist the jury in understanding the contact your wife had with your son's phone on that day?
Yes.
We could admit defendants are for demonstrative purposes.
No objection.
Sure. Are admitted without objection.
Judge.
Yeah.
And Mr. Dorsey, the 317-289-4080 number is your wife's number.
That's her number.
And it appears the first contact that she had with your son that day on his phone, again, this is switch 428, so this would be in Central Time, so this would be in 10:43:56. So the first time she had contact with him through his phone would have been that morning.
Yes.
And then I think you said that you had been in contact with your wife that day?
Yeah, yeah.
So you understood, I mean, based upon that contact, would it be fair to say, knowing your wife and the tone of the conversation, that you would describe it, that she was concerned?
She was concerned, yeah.
And throughout the day in your son's phone, there are at least 5 additional calls that your wife makes to your son's phone. Is that
Right.
And I think you said when you arrived on the scene, police were around. Is it correct that your wife was there?
She was already there, yeah.
Did your wife want to talk to the police?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And in fact, did your wife talk to the police?
Yeah, she talked to, I think, one of the officers, the detectives.
Did, later in the day, did you receive any contact from police regarding your son?
No,
Did you receive contact after your son had been arrested and taken from the Marion County Jail to RDC, which is the Reception Diagnostics Center? Did you receive calls from the Reception Diagnostics Center?
yes, I did. I received a call from them, wanted to make sure I was okay.
And so they were calling you to make sure you were okay, is that correct?
Yeah, because he had expressed concern that somebody was out to kill us.
And it was your understanding that it was concerning enough that they called you to make sure you were okay?
Yes.
Now, I just want to back up a little bit. I mean, we have talked about the fact that Elliahs had some birth trauma. He had a head injury when he was younger.
Right.
Played full contact football.
Right.
But it wasn't really until maybe a few weeks before this incident that you started noticing differences.
Differences, yes, sir.
But, and that was primarily when you got back from Wilmington.
Right, yeah.
And again, at this time, you weren't having as much contact with him as you had when he was younger.
Right, yeah. We coached the youth together, so after we got done with practice, he went and done his thing. I went on home. Yeah.
But I guess what I'm getting at, it wasn't the same type of close relationship.
Right, yeah, we went like right there by each other all the time, right?
And, but as far as you know, he was having contact with Deontay, correct?
Yeah, he was talking to Deontay, yeah.
But at this time, Deontay was living in Jeffersonville, is that correct?
Yes.
And then also, he was at college at Manchester.
Yeah.
And they, fair to say, they were very close.
Yeah.
In high school and in junior.
And in junior high.
But after graduating from high school, they were not seeing each other as regularly.
Not as regular, because one was up north, by Michigan, the other one's in Ohio. So, other than maybe text or phone calls,
And your son, Larry Jr., he was still here in Indianapolis?
he was still here, yes.
And you're assuming they continued to have some contact, but again, you weren't keeping as close track.
Right, exactly.
And in terms of injuries from football, I mean, obviously, you didn't see injuries that were necessarily so severe that Elliahs needed to be hospitalized.
Right, no, I didn't see any of those.
But would it also be common for not only Elliahs, but others playing football to have their belt rung?
Yeah, that's just not only just in football, but any sports or, accident or somebody just walking, and falls and trip and fall. Concussions they're just, it's a shake of the brain.
And the position that Elliahs played, linebacker, I mean, that is a position that does require that person to be aggressive.
To be very aggressive.
To be a hard hitter.
Exactly.
And that is something that, I mean, you mentioned there were some things Elliahs may not have been great at, but he was a hard hitter.
He was a hard hitter.
And
Yeah.
that is the position he played from the time he was 5 years old.
Yeah, he played that all the way up. Yeah.
And I want to talk to you a little bit about, I know you're probably the kind of equipment that the pros use in protecting them. I think there's probably, that's not quite the same level of equipment
No,
that
because
the kids are using.
No, because now they got it, the concussion protocol. They got the little chips inside the helmet to let them know when the player hits his head hard or something. That's why you'll see when you watch a game, they'll take them to the tent. They might not look like they're hurt, but because it done took and brought out, like a high raised static onto that they'll be like, okay, come on to the tent, let's check you out.
And I'm assuming particularly when we're talking about very young kids at 5 or 6, I mean, fair to say that equipment is not always
No, it's
best-
not. It's
best
not the
fitting
best.
equipment.
It's not the best equipment.
And it's not the best fitting
It's
equipment.
not the best fitting equipment because you get helmets and kids' heads are all different sizes, so you try to do your best to fit them in a helmet. Sometimes you might have to put them in a thicker jaw pad, but still, they might have a little room in their head. So you try to do your best to fit them to keep the helmet tight.
Let me also ask you this. Do you have a permit to carry a gun?
Yes, I do.
And does your son Deontay also have a permit to carry?
Yes, he does.
Is it pretty common for you and your sons, I mean, prior to this incident, to go out to the shooting range?
Yeah, that was our hobby. We'd go to the range and fire off our gun.
And is that something that basically Elliahs, Deontay, and you did?
Yeah.
Growing up after high school?
After high school, right. And when they got old enough to carry.
So that was kind of a...
That was our
Family
family,
sport.
yeah, Father Sundays.
Okay. I have just 1 minute, Judge.
Mr. Dorsey, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Now, based on your testimony, it's apparent that you were very involved in your three sons' activities as they were growing up. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Both you and your wife.
Yes, sir.
And you love all three of your sons very much. Is that
Yes, I
correct?
do.
Now, you described some physical health issues regarding the defendant's birth and while he was 1 and 2 years old. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when he was 1, he fell out of his crib. Is that right?
Yeah.
And after that, he was rushed to the hospital. Is that correct?
Yes.
And while at the hospital, an MRI was completed there. Is that
Yes.
correct? And based on that MRI, it was determined that your son, luckily, he did not suffer any injuries from the fall. Is that correct?
Right, yeah. I think he had a big
And
goose head.
okay. And in fact, despite all the close calls that you spoke about, the defendant, he was a happy baby. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And he was actually walking before the age of 1. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah. And he was talking before the age of 2. Is that accurate?
Well, kind of almost.
Okay, sure.
Almost. Oh, yeah.
But he was reaching all of his milestones.
He was reaching what kids do. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And he was actually reading early.
Yeah, he was reading early. Yeah, that was something that we done.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then during this time, as he was growing up, you and your wife, as loving parents, you always took your sons, including the defendant, to their child well visits every year to make sure that they were progressing proper.
Right.
Would that be accurate? And there were never any issues regarding those child well visits, correct?
No, not that I can think of.
Okay. He was always cleared, and they did thorough checkups, the doctors that you would take your sons to, correct?
They didn't do their jobs. Yeah.
Okay. And then in high school, your son, he went to high school with his brother, Deontay. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And before high school, though, your son was in a grade ahead of Deontay. Is that accurate?
Right.
Okay. And then in 8th grade, you chose to hold your son back, despite the teacher saying he was ready to progress to high school.
Right. Yeah. Because it just, we had the option to do that.
Sure.
And I was like, no, he's not ready because I felt he was being lazy and doing his work.
So it was your choice, but the teacher said, hey, he's progressed fine, he can go ahead and move on to high school, but you chose to keep him in 8th grade.
I kept him back.
And then when you did that, then at that 8th grade year, then Deontay and the defendant, they were in the same class then, right?
Right, yeah.
And ironically, that was the same year that y'all won the city championship, right? In football.
Yeah.
They were both together on that team.
On that
after your
team,
son had played.
because they had played with the guys prior to that year, so yeah.
And you mentioned your son in his football career. When you play football, you have to pass the physical every year to play it, right?
Yeah.
Every year you go through a full workup with your doctor.
No, that's not really a full workup. It's just a hernia check and a heart check. That's pretty bad.
And you have to go to the doctor, correct?
Yeah, they got to go to a doctor to get physical.
And they have to fill out an IHSAA form,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
the doctor, an ethical doctor is going to check all those things and check that the participant or the
Right.
player passes all
Right.
those things in order to be eligible each year to play high school football.
Right.
And at the POW League, did you require the same thing to make sure that the kids had passed physicals before playing?
No, that wasn't really required, but I always suggested it for the parents to do that.
But you always made sure your sons passed physicals and were healthy to play football before they played.
Right, because they always went to the doctor prior. So.
And after high school, you stated that Deontay, he went off to Manchester,
Right.
right? And the defendant, he did not, correct?
Right, yeah.
They were kind of separated at that point, is that accurate?
Right, yes.
And that was because your son didn't go off to college initially because his grades just weren't good enough to get into the college that he wanted to at that time, is that accurate?
Right, yeah.
And over the years that you've been the parent or the father of the defendant, you've had no knowledge of him ever using any drugs, correct?
Right, no.
Okay. And if the defendant was using drugs, he would have been hiding that from you and your family while he was growing up and in the years leading up to this incident, correct?
Right, I mean, I didn't see no signs, so.
Right. And it would be a surprise to you if the defendant had first used a drug at the age of 13. Would that be a surprise?
Oh, yeah, that was, I mean, I was right by him all the time, so that, and I wonder where they would have got it from.
And it would also be a surprise if he had started at the age of 17, correct?
Right, yeah, I mean, after high school, I probably wouldn't have been so surprised about it, but.
And you mentioned, again, back to the football, that your son played middle linebacker, correct?
Right.
Right. And as the coach, and as the coaches that you entrust to coach your son, and you've actually been your son's coach, you guys teach proper tackling technique.
Yeah, I was heads up.
Certified, right?
Certified, yeah. So I traveled. I've done it for PAL, so I was heads up when it started. So I'm real big on trying to make sure that they do the proper tackling technique.
Sure. And you taught the proper tackling technique based on the heads up
Concept,
criteria
yeah.
To your son, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, heads up came along pretty much after
Okay.
they were out of high school. So.
Sure. But the heads up, as it states, it's an initiative by USA Football.
USA
correct?
Football,
Right.
yes.
Yeah, and then heads up initiative teaches proper tackling to not use your head.
To not use your head, right? Because a lot of them drop their head and use the crown of their helmets and stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
And you knew that prior to heads up being an experienced coach.
Yeah.
You don't lead with your head, right?
Right, you never leave with your head.
And even when your son was little and you were coaching him and everything, I'm sure as an experienced coach, you taught them not to lead with their head.
To use their shoulders, yeah.
Right, exactly. And if you saw a player doing that, you would immediately correct them, I'm sure.
Right, yeah. Tell them, get their head up, you can break your neck, you could,
Yeah. Right. In the week leading up to April 9th of 2020, your son, he was spending a lot of time with his friend Rich. Is that accurate? Is that what you recall?
yeah, I don't even know who that guy is, but yeah, he spent a lot of time in the studio. They were trying to make an album, so I know he spent a lot of time in the studio.
Right. And that was the week leading up to April 9th.
Right,
correct?
so like I said, I don't even know who Rich is, never seen him.
But you were informed of that information by the defendant that he was spending a lot of time with Rich making music.
Making music, yeah.
And again, you have 3 sons, is that right?
Yes,
And Larry Jr., Deontay, and the defendant.
yes.
And did Larry Jr. play football too?
Yeah, he played up until his, I think it was his senior year. He didn't like the coach over at Tech, and he said, I'm not playing.
Okay.
Yeah, so, kids do that. I try to convince them, but you don't like the coach, you don't like the coach.
So Larry Jr. played all throughout high school, correct?
Yeah.
And Deontay, he played actually 4 additional years in college.
Yeah.
And the defendant, he played 1 additional year at Wilmington after high school, is that correct?
2 years.
2 years, he was at Wilmington 2 years?
He was there 2 years.
Oh,
Was
really?
it 2 years? Yeah,
2 years. Okay.
Yeah,
2 full years before he came back home?
before he came home.
Okay.
Well, I guess at some point during the second year he stopped playing. I didn't know, so.
And then, but all 3 of your boys played football through youth and at least through high school.
Through high
correct?
school, yeah.
And Larry, he runs a successful business right now, correct?
Right, yeah, he's a personal trainer.
And Deontay, he's successful in his own right, wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Neither Larry or Deontay have been in any trouble like the defendant here today, correct?
Right, no.
And that is despite having played football either longer or as long as the defendant, essentially, is that correct?
Right, yeah.
And then you mentioned that the defendant has coached in the PAL League with you, correct?
Right.
And you believe in the PAL League, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah.
And what it stands for?
Yeah.
Building
And everything they doing, yeah.
building
Yeah.
self-esteem in the youth
Yeah.
and having great mentors to help youth.
Yeah,
And
enjoying the kids,
Yeah.
they need that now, so.
Yeah, it's a great program, wouldn't you
Yeah.
agree? And so the defendant, he actually helped you coach all the way up until this incident. Is that accurate?
Right, yes.
And that's indicative of the snacks that were in the back of his car, right?
Right.
Or he's not gonna have snacks in his car from two years ago.
No, that would
Yeah.
be the current, yeah.
Yeah. And so, in order to make sure that that POW initiative, right, have positive mentors, role models, coaching youth, you take it seriously that you have people that you trust coach with you in that league. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And your son was one of those people.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
All the way up until this incident.
Right.
Now, after the defendant's arrest and the release of his vehicle, you actually looked in that vehicle. Is that correct?
No, I didn't get to see the vehicle.
No, I mean, it was released and then you cleaned it out, right?
No,
Oh,
I
you
didn't.
did clean it out.
No, I didn't. I didn't get nowhere near the vehicle.
Oh, okay.
I-
But eventually, did you recover some type of Valentine's Day book or something from the vehicle?
Yeah, that came from the car lot.
Okay. the
They
car,
handed the
sure.
stuff, the car
Yeah,
lot.
Yeah, they had some
Cleaned it
personal possessions that were collected.
Yeah,
from the car.
they cleaned it out and took whatever they wanted, I guess. So
And what was your understanding as to where those items, those Valentine's book and Valentine's card, where it came from?
I thought they came from Beyonda.
And that was his former girlfriend
Right.
that he had broken
Yeah.
up with, that you didn't know that he broke
That
up
I didn't know he
with.
broke up with. Cause I wouldn't know, like, why would you get Valentine from somebody else? So
Sure.
I thought it was from her.
You had no idea about Aisha Brown? Aisha
No, whoever that is, no.
And the apartment that you went to on April the 9th, 2020, how did you know to get there? How did you know how to get there? Yeah.
Because my wife,
Your wife had already.
she had already been there and she told me where it was at.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 236 and 237.
Okay.
Do those accurately reflect what the items, the Valentine's items that you were provided by the car lot?
They came out of the car lot, yeah.
Okay. All right. At this time, Judge State offers for admission of evidence, State's Exhibits 236 and 237.
No objection to 236 and 237.
So 236 and 237 admitted without objection.
There's 236. And then 237. And then finally, you talked about speaking with your son on April the 9th of 2020. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it looked like that first call was about at 12:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, that was about right, lunch break. Yeah.
Okay, about lunch break. Okay. And despite whatever the content was of that phone call, you didn't actually go over to that apartment complex until your wife was over there like 3 or 4 hours later.
Right,
Is that
yeah.
correct? I don't think I have anything else, Judge. Thank you.
Redirect.
Thank you, Judge. That's all right. No, just- oh, okay. Mr. Dorsey, just a couple of follow-up questions. Mr. Leffler mentioned the fact of the training that you give young kids on keeping your head up.
Yes.
Now, obviously, training is important, fundamentals are important.
Yes.
But, in the heat of a game, is that always accomplished?
No.
Particularly if the competition is intense.
The tense that they do what they can to take a person down, you know, so they drop their heads, they get away from their techniques.
Particularly if somebody is known to be a hard hitter.
A hard hitter.
Be fair to say that there are people that take pride in the fact that they're hard hitters, they get their head in the middle of it, they put their head right in the
They'll
middle.
put their head right there, they'll forget about their training and everything, so that just happens in the sport.
I don't have any further questions, George.
Questions on those questions, Steve?
Mr. Dorsey, if you ever saw Elliahs, as a concerned parent and coach, suffer the consequences of a concussion, you would have pulled him from the game.
Oh, they took his helmet.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank
That'd have
you.
been automatic.
No further questions.
Mr. Castaldo?
But again, as you testified on direct earlier, if one of your sons was hurt, either Elliahs or Deontay, they'd stay away.
Actually,
They'll
the
stay away from it.
objection, Judge, calls for speculation. He's asking for him to get into the mindset of his children.
Response?
I'll rephrase.
Understood. The question withdrawn.
Did you?
I didn't see him
Hold it,
put
hold it,
his-
there's no question, sorry, just let me ask the question. You saw both Elliahs and Deontay play on numerous occasions.
Yes.
And basically was your philosophy and the philosophy of playing them at that time, if you have injuries, you play through them.
Well, they'll play through some injuries, but not head injuries. So, yeah.
Nothing for the judge.
Hey,
No, Judge.
ladies and gentlemen, do you have questions for this witness? I see at least one hand.
Sorry.
All right, sir. I'm going to be asking you the questions that you want to tell your answer to the jurors.
Okay.
All right. When noticing his behavior changing, was there any feeling that maybe he needed help?
No, not at that time.
And was Elliahs living with you in April of 2020?
Yes, he was.
And was football coaching season active in April of 2020?
We're doing preseason.
The behaviors you talked about in the weeks prior to the event, those didn't concern you enough to take his guns?
No, not at that time.
And did he exhibit any behavior that made you fearful for the kids on his team?
No.
Has he had any recurring issues as a result of his hitting his head?
No, not that I noticed.
And if you know, has he received any treatment for it?
If I had noticed, he would have, but I didn't notice any.
All right, and if you know, has he received any treatment for that since this incident?
Not that I know. If I had known, I would have gotten him some treatment, but the incident happened, so at that point it's too late because he's incarcerated, so you can't do anything about it at that point.
You probably already answered this, but I'll ask it again. Was there any help or intervention sought a couple weeks prior to the incident when he started displaying paranoia?
No, when he started, he was in and out the house, so he was in and then he might stay over a friend's house and then he'll come back. So he wasn't around me enough for me just to say, hey, come on, let's go and get help.
Mr. Casanova, questions on the jurors' questions?
Yes, Judge. Mr. Dorsey, on the day of this incident, was it concerning enough to you that you left work and drove to the scene about what you were hearing in terms of what Elliahs was saying about his safety and not being able to?
Yeah, it really became very concerning at that point.
State questions on the jurors' questions?
No, Judge.
Ladies and gentlemen, further questions for this witness? All right, I don't see any hands on that. All right, sir, you may step down. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been at this about 90 minutes. Good time for us to take a morning break. Again, you're not the form or expressing the opinion about the guilt or innocence of the defendant. You've heard all the evidence of the counsel and the court's final instruction. You may discuss this case amongst yourselves, provided that you're all together in a jury room and you don't go to the ultimate question of guilt or innocence. If anyone does try to talk about this case, you must report that to the court immediately. We'll be in a 15-minute recess. All rise.
Judge, may he be released from this Mr. Dorsey?
Yes.
Record should reflect jurors have left the room. Anything administratively before we take our morning break? Mr. Casanova?
No, Judge.
Stand. All right, we'll see everybody in 15 minutes.
Okay.
Travis, like I tell the jurors to be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and anything will be appropriate. Please have a seat. Once you're comfortable in your chair, could you tell the jurors who you are and how you spell your name?
Yes, I'm Larry Dorsey Jr. That's Larry Dorsey Jr.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Mr. Dorsey. Can you explain to the jurors what your relationship is?
Yes, I'm his older brother.
And how much older are you than us?
6 years? 5 years.
5 years. You have a younger brother.
I have a younger brother,
What's his name?
Deontay Dorsey.
And how much younger?
Older. He's younger. 6 years.
And do you have any children?
I have 2.
And are you currently employed?
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors what you do for a living?
I am a performance specialist, fancy word for a trainer, so strength and conditioning.
How long have you had that job?
10 plus. Multitude.
Where did you attend grammar school?
Tech, well, for high school,
Start at grammar school.
grammar school, so elementary school.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm used to say elementary. I went to Canada.
So Elias and Deontay went to a different elementary school than you did.
Yes, sir.
Okay. They went to IPS 14.
Yes.
And where did you attend high school?
Arsenal Tech.
And how would you describe the involvement in your mother and father, and not only you but all your brothers growing up?
Heavily involved.
Were they involved in school activities?
For like the football related or sports related, yeah.
And did you play football when you were in elementary school?
Yes, elementary school.
How long did you play?
I played up to my freshman year of high school.
But from that point on, you stopped playing football?
I stopped playing football. Yeah.
And how would you describe your relationship with Elias when you got younger?
Close.
Would that also be a fair description of your relationship with Deontay?
Yeah.
I mean, just generally, if you had to describe the relationship between all three of you when you were growing up, would you describe that as a close
A
relationship?
close relationship.
Was your father and your mother also always very supportive of not only you but your brother?
Yes, sir.
They, in terms of sports, in terms of school, all of those things.
Yes.
Now, I think you stated earlier that Deontay and Elias went to IPS 14.
Yes, sir.
And where did they go to high school?
Harlem.
They both went to
They both went to Harlem.
And in Arlington, they were essentially in the same grade, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Even though Elias was a year older.
Yes.
So they, just in terms of their junior high, middle school, high school, they were always at the same school.
Yeah.
They saw each other a little more regularly. Based upon that, then maybe you saw them.
Correct.
Would it be fair to say that that didn't mean that you still weren't close to them?
Right.
They just saw each other a little more regularly.
Yeah.
Were you aware of Elias going to Wilmington for college?
Yes.
And I believe that he went to college from 2015 to 2016. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
After he came back from college, was there a period of time where, for lack of a better term, you and Elias were estranged?
Yes.
And how long was that period of time?
About a year.
And Okay, I'm sorry. And this happened when you returned from Wilmington?
Yes.
And how did you, but basically you guys got back together, so
Yes.
can you just explain when that happened?
Us getting back together, or what happened between
Yeah, I mean, your brother Deontay, when did he get married?
2018?
And was it at your brother's wedding that
Is
you
it-
and Elliahs reconciled?
Yeah, we kind of was getting talk, seeing him. You know, we just said hi, and then I said probably 2 months after that, then we started talking together again, talking to each other.
Kind of more regularly as you
Yeah.
acted in the past?
Yes.
Before this period of about a year when you weren't
Yes.
seeing each other every week?
Yeah.
And when that happened, reunited, so this would have been 2018, when you guys reunited, did you start to notice some changes in Elliahs that you hadn't seen before the estrangement?
Yes.
Can you describe to the jurors what changes you noticed?
Very, his face, you know, he kept himself well in the room, and then it just started deteriorating. Him being shifty, him like, you know, constantly looking over his shoulder, you know, his lips was kind of like black. His posture was very slumped over, and he was zoned out a lot, spaced out a lot.
When you say shifty, are you referring to jittery looking over his shoulder?
Yes.
Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Was he expressing any concerns to you about his safety?
Yes. You know, he just when we first started talking, coming back, not so much, but then when we started getting closer again, yes, he was, you know, was afraid that, you know, someone was always not out to get him, but just, you know, he didn't trust anybody.
Did you notice that now it's pretty common in your family amongst your brothers to go out to the shooting range?
Yeah.
Now you don't have a permit,
I don't know.
but you would still go out and shoot
I would go
at
out
the range.
and shoot at the range.
And that was a pretty common activity with you, your brothers, and your dad.
Yes, sir.
Did you begin noticing, again, in this period, after you guys reunite, so probably after 2018, did you notice anything concerning about Elliahs always carrying a gun?
Yeah.
Could you describe to the viewers what you noticed?
Him, you know, taking the gun to places where I don't feel like he needs it, protection of that. Him wearing a vest. Like, I would just see him, you know, in passing, and he was on the go, and the places we, like, I would say the places we was going, I don't see the need of having a weapon.
You said he was wearing a vest. What are you referring to, a bulletproof
A
vest?
bulletproof vest.
Okay. So you saw him would be fair that you saw him wearing that more regularly
Yeah,
when you guys got back together after that period of estrangement.
yeah,
And would it also be fair to say that you saw him carrying a gun more regularly after you guys got back together after that period of estrangement?
yeah,
You said that, you know, he was wearing a vest, carrying a gun at places you didn't think was necessary.
yeah.
Ask if you could talk about one instance in particular during this period, 2018, 2019, where Elliahs came over to your house
Yeah.
and you guys went out to lunch, I think at a ramen place.
We went to a ramen restaurant. Yeah,
Can you explain or tell the jurors what happened on that incident?
yeah. We came over, had some in between time with training clients, and I just said, "Do you go eat?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "There's a good restaurant by my house, so we can go there." And we went there, and he had his, he had a right to carry, but he had his pistol. And I'm like, "What do we need that for? We just going around the corner from the house." I don't see the need to even have that. And I just brushed it off, and we actually went inside. When we went inside and sat down, even then he couldn't focus on just eating. He was very protective, and he was looking over his shoulder. He was looking left, right, looking at the exit.
So when you say protective, this, what you just described, that he was looking around.
Yeah.
He was mindful of the exit.
Yeah,
He was mindful of who was in the restaurant.
yeah,
Who was walking by the restaurant.
yeah,
And at this time, again, you thought it was unusual because this restaurant is in your neighborhood.
yeah. It's in my neighborhood, and it's like go there and eat. That's it.
Right. I mean, this is the place where you have your family.
I took my family there once. Yeah.
So you thought that was very unusual because this is a safe place and he's behaving this way.
Yes, and I'm like, it's me. I'm nobody. If you're with me, we go here and just eat and go back home.
And then I think earlier you said that you were, in addition to kind of seeing and carrying a weapon regularly where it appeared to you wouldn't be needed, and wearing a bulletproof vest wouldn't be needed. You also described changes in his grooming. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, fair to say your brother, knowing him in high school and maybe up to the time he became estranged, would it be fair to say he was fastidious about his appearance?
Yeah.
And you noticed that changing.
Yes.
And this would have been in this time, 2018. Yes?
Yes.
And then I think you also said kind of the zoning out. By that, can you explain to the jurors what you mean by that?
Yeah. Just there's a time where we was all together at my brother's house, just playing, typical card games, and he was just there. He wasn't we were always talking to each other, and he was just sitting there, twirling his hair, or he couldn't stay focused on the task. And it was like, okay, it's your turn. And he was like, wait, what? And then he will do it, and then he will zone out again. And he refer to twisting his hair and just stare in blank space.
And obviously, that is something that you had noticed before, particularly before that period of estrangement, which would have been prior to 2017.
Yeah.
And the things you were noticing were basically kind of things that were happening after you came back from Wilmington, 2018, 2019. Would that be fair to say?
Yes. Do you know Bianca Davis? Yes.
And can you explain to the jurors who Bianca Davis is?
At the time, was his girlfriend.
And how long had Elliahs and Bianca been together?
I want to say about maybe 4 or 5 years.
Did they meet in high school, basically?
I believe so.
Okay. And was she somebody who would regularly come with Elliahs to family events?
Yeah.
So you had regular contact with her? Well,
Yeah.
Not regular,
No.
but you saw her on a regular basis?
Yeah. So we went to a Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house. He was his plus one. Going to our family trip to Kentucky Kingdom. That was his plus one. So.
Did she contact you by text message the day before this incident, the day before April 9th of 2020?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as defendants S. Can you look at that?
Yes.
Is that the text message you received from Bianca Davis basically the night before this incident.
Yeah.
And so, based upon that text message, did you have some concerns for your brother?
Yes.
Were you planning on contacting him the next day?
Yes.
Did he contact you before that, before you were able to call him?
Yes, he actually contacted me.
And that day, that was a working day for you?
Yeah.
So you were basically in the middle of training?
I was in the middle of training with a client.
And that's when you got a phone call?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as defendant's T, which is a copy of your brother's phone records for the day of April 9th, 2020. And these phone records, what was your phone number at that time?
And then 7737.
650-7737. And this phone record shows the number of times you and he contacted this day highlighted in green. Do you think that would assist the jury in seeing the number of times you guys had contact during that day?
Yes.
Move to minutes 18 for demonstrative purposes.
No objection.
Show T admitted for demonstrative purposes without objection.
And move to publish. And you said that your number was 650-7737, correct?
Yes.
And for the jury, the first column is the calling number, 205-1786. Is that your brother's number?
Yes.
So on 4/9/2020, and for the jury, 4/28, by the stipulation, this MEID number would mean this is the central time. So the call was made at 12/16/25. Your brother contacted you at first time that day at 12/16/25.
Yes.
Were you concerned by that conversation?
Yes.
And what did how you call?
To pack up and get out, leave town, get the boys. Someone's out to get our family. Someone had to hit on our family.
Did he talk about the fact not only the family, but he felt he was in danger?
Yes.
How long was that phone call?
Very brief.
How did it end?
It just, once I try to get more details out of him, it just ended with like, I'll call you back.
At that point, did you have any idea where he was?
No.
Did you get any information from him that day as to where he was?
I tried to.
And let me show you, again, this is T. This is page 3 of defendant's T. Again, this is 4/9/2020. For the jury, this NED number is 428, so all of these are in central time. So it looks like you tried to call him back 7 times, is that correct?
Yes.
Were you able to contact him on one of those occasions?
One of them.
And did that call also cause you concern?
Yes.
Was he still kind of repeating the same things?
Repeating the same thing. I can tell when I was trying to get something out of him, it was empty. It was very, like, I was just talking to empty space.
And when you say talking to empty space, that he just wasn't responding?
Not responding.
Okay. And I'm assuming you were very concerned at this point?
Yes.
Trying to get some information as to where he was?
Yes.
What was going on?
What was going on? Where was he at?
Okay. And you were getting any information like that?
No.
And then it looks like you still tried to call him back a number of times. When you tried to call him back after that, were you basically just going to voicemail?
It would ring, yeah, it would ring and then hang up.
Now, your fiance at the time, is it Tiandra?
Tiandra.
Was she with you when you were getting these calls that day?
She was with me in the beginning, because I was at work. And when I tried to call her multiple times, I heard I was heading home, going home.
Let me back up a little bit and ask you about some more questions about the text message you got from Bianca.
Okay.
I mean, you've already testified that this is somebody that you saw at least regularly at family events. Your family and Elliahs and Bianca would go to outings. So, fair to say you had some familiarity with her? Yes?
Yes.
Some familiarity with her personality?
Yeah.
I mean, would she have sent a text message like that based upon what you know of her?
Objection, speculation.
Yes, finish this question. Probably so. I'll let you finish if you wish.
Well, I mean, did you take what she said seriously?
Yes.
And how did you find out about the shooting?
My mom called.
And where was your mom at when she called you?
She called me, and she was, I guess, on the way to where it happened.
So she was on the way to 1803 Edinburgh Square.
Yes.
And you're aware that she actually went there, correct?
Yes.
And not long after that, did you find out about some additional text messages that your brother had exchanged with Bianca?
Objection, Judge.
And you can answer yes or no on that one.
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as Defendant's A. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Basically, it's had a copy of the subsequent text messages that you saw that were exchanged between Bianca and your brother prior to the incident. After the incident?
Yes.
Have you had contact with your brother since he's been arrested on this case?
Yes.
Does he call you pretty regularly?
Yes.
Can you describe what happens if, for example, somebody doesn't answer the phone and then you get back in contact with him? What's his response to that?
He gets worried.
Objection, relevance.
Next question.
Does he express some concern about whether or not you guys are safe?
Yes.
And that's been ongoing since he's been arrested?
Yes.
Those are all questions I have, Judge.
You may cross.
Thank you, Judge.
Time you didn't speak with the defendant for about a year, and you reconnected. That was reconnected in about November of 2019. Is that correct?
Kind of after my brother's wedding.
Is
So,
that-
yeah, November.
About the November prior to this incident happening.
Yes.
And that was around the time that he broke up with Bianca, is that correct? And you stopped talking to the defendant following a physical altercation with him, is that correct?
Yes.
And that physical altercation, did that occur at your home?
Yes.
And he came to your home, and when he came in, you thought he was looking for a fight? He had a chip on his shoulder?
Yeah.
And he said something to you about needing to spend more time with your son, and you were offended by that?
Yes.
And so you told him to leave,
Yes.
and he refused to do so.
Yes.
And so you had to physically remove him from your home. And that caused the year-long separation.
Yes.
You're concerned about him wearing a bulletproof vest. You're the only one to really push that issue with him, correct?
Well, I never told him. I was just told, everybody, like my mom, and my dad, and my brother, and my fiance.
Did you ask him why he was wearing a bulletproof vest?
In passing, yes.
He just needed to stay ready, is that correct?
Yes.
He always carried a gun, correct?
Yeah.
And he did so, in his words, because he could, right?
You have permit to carry.
And when you would ask him why he was carrying, he would say, because I can, right?
He had a permit to carry.
And when you would ask him why he was carrying a gun, he would say, because I can, right?
You wouldn't say it like that, no.
You talked about the issues with his grooming and the changing in the way he took care of himself. Specifically, what do you mean by that?
And he was taking care of himself. Like, he was just well groomed. He was just made sure he never picked at his face. He didn't have, it was normal for him to go to the barbershop every week. His face was bright. And like I said, he just was well kept up.
And the changes you noted, that started when you reconnected in November of 2019, correct?
Well, I saw it in passing when I go to my mom and dad's house, so it was kind of before then.
Were you aware of the defendant using marijuana?
Yes.
Do you know when he started using marijuana?
No.
When did you become aware that he used marijuana?
When we was over my brother's house.
About what time frame is that?
I really can't put a time frame. It was. He was already down. He already had some black lips, and his appearance was kind of deteriorating. So I can't really put a time on it.
The first time you talked to your brother, the defendant, that day on April 9th, 2020, you were at work, right?
No, I was at home.
Oh, the first call you were at home and then went to work?
The first of the incident,
Yes.
I was at home.
And you left home and went to work?
Are you talking about the actual day when it happened, or
Yes, you testified on direct that he called you at,
on the 8th, or on the 9th?
on the 9th, the day of the incident. He called you at 12:16, or just after 12:16
Yes, I
p.m.
was at work.
You were at work at that time?
Yes,
And then you went from work to home?
yes.
Could have just a moment here. Judge, no further questions?
Are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, do you have questions for this witness? See if he's right hand. Further questions from the jury? So I'm going to ask you the questions, but you need to tell the jurors your answers. Okay. All right. Were you aware of Elliahs regularly carrying guns back in 2014?
Yes.
And did you hear anyone in the background when you spoke with the defendant on the day of the incident?
No.
Did Elliahs ever mention who was going to hurt his family, and if so, who and why?
Yes. He assumed, he said Bianca had a hit out on her family. And that was it.
Questions on the jurors' questions? Gaston?
No, Judge.
State?
No, Judge, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, further questions for this witness? Ready? Do you see any hands on that, sir? You may step down. Thank you. May he be released from the subpoena?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Defendant, you may call your next.
Defense would call Teondor Cox.
Very good. promise what you're about to tell the jurors will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under pain of penalty of perjury? Please have a seat. Once you're comfortable in your chair, can you please tell the jurors who you are and how you spell your name?
My name is Tiandra Cox, Tiandra. Last name Cox, Cox.
Ms. Cox, will you tell the jury a little bit about yourself as far as where you work, do you have children, that sort of thing?
Yes, my name is Tiandra Cox. I am 36 years old. I live in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm the fiance of Larry Dorsey Jr. And I have two boys, Andrea 17 and Titan 8.
And you're a little nervous, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to talk about, how do you know Elias?
I am the partner of his oldest brother
And how long have you known Elias?
since he was a freshman in high school.
So you've known Elias since high school.
Yes.
What type of relationship do you have with Elias?
It's an older sister, little brother relationship.
Okay. And you said that you're the fiance of Larry Jr. How long have you guys been together?
Oh man. Probably about 15 or 16 years.
Okay. And so you knew Elias in high school. Describe what he was like in high school.
He was outgoing. He was funny. Well known. He's popular. Sports. He was interested in sports a lot.
So, funny, outgoing. Was there a period when you started noticing some changes or differences with Elias?
Yes.
And when was that?
When he came back from college.
Okay, and that was Wilmington College?
Yes.
And when he came back from Wilmington College, describe some of the differences or the changes you'd noticed.
He was more depressed because he came back, and he just told me that he felt like he was spiraling and he couldn't get it together. And he compared himself to his brothers a lot.
And did he think that his brothers were more or less successful than him?
More.
And so he seems depressed. He says he's spiraling. Is he doing anything different or wearing anything different than what he used to?
Yes, eventually he started to wear a bulletproof vest.
And did that seem odd to you?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because all three brothers, they're usually not involved in anything to require like a bulletproof vest, like protection or safety or anything like that. They all led like normal like lives. There wasn't, I just felt there wasn't anything that they needed that for.
Did he tell you why he thought he needed to wear that?
Almost like you never know like what people's intentions are, like that.
And was that the kind of mindset that Elias had in high school?
No.
And at some point, did he become estranged from Larry Jr.?
Yes.
And what the circumstances behind that, was that something that you wouldn't have expected from Elliahs?
Not at all, because it was over something that like people just don't. It wasn't. I'm trying to say it the right way. What the argument was about, it wasn't. It didn't take that level of them fighting like that.
At some point, did Elliahs start talking to you about believing that people were after him?
Or when I asked him about the bulletproof vest, why do you have that on?
That's when he said,
Yes.
you never know who's out there.
Yes.
So now I want to talk about some changes that happened near the end of 2019. Were you aware that Elliahs and Bianca broke up?
Yes.
And how had you become aware of that?
He told me.
And were you somebody that Elliahs kind of talked to about relationship kind of stuff?
Yes.
After that breakup, after he told you they'd broken up, what were you able to observe? What changes were you able to observe with Elliahs?
His appearance, for one.
Tell me about that.
Elliahs put a lot of effort into his appearance. And I just noticed that that wasn't a priority after. Sometimes you'd be talking to him and he wasn't like present, like he just wasn't there. Like you'd have to get his attention a couple times, or try to.
Okay, so he was physically there, but you have to get his attention
Yes.
to get him to respond.
Yes.
What about twisting his hair? Did you ever notice that?
Yes, it was around the same time he started doing the staring off into space. The twist, he was twisting his hair and rocking back and forth. Rocking
Back and forth?
Yes.
And was that something that was kind of new?
Yes.
Now I want to talk to you about a conversation you had with Elliahs a few days before the incident about Bianca. Do you know what he was talking about with Bianca?
No. I just talked to him about when they broke up.
Was there a conversation about getting out of town for some reason?
Judge, I'm gonna object to leading. And it was a conversation between.
Overrule that. I'll treat it as a very good question. She can answer yes or no. You can answer yes or no.
No.
Okay. Now, were you aware of a text message that Bianca sent to the family the night before the shooting?
Yes.
And how were you aware of it?
Larry Jr. showed me.
Okay, and so you actually read the text?
Yes.
And what was your response after reading this text that Bianca sent the night before?
I asked that Larry try to talk to his parents and try to maybe see about removing his guns.
Why did you want to see about removing his guns?
Because the text message, it read as like a dangerous situation, like a paranoid type of thing, and I I listen to a lot of true crime stuff, so I was like, that makes sense in my mind. That's the next step.
Okay, so you wanted the parents to get his guns away from him?
Yes.
So I want to talk to you about after his arrest. Immediately after his arrest, once he was able to have phone calls, if you didn't answer the phone when he called, what was his response?
He would freak out. He would panic, and he would think something was always wrong with us, or something happened to us.
And what about now? Does he still do that?
He still does it, but it's almost like a concern, like, hey, what's happening with them? Where are they? Or it's, I just thought you never want to speak to me again, or I know you probably didn't want to talk to me, or things like that. Like, he gets concerned about that.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. So in November of 2019, the defendant broke up with Bianca, correct?
I'm sorry.
In November of 2019, the defendant broke up with Bianca, correct?
I believe so.
And he would talk to you about that, right?
Yes.
And he was upset about the breakup, right?
Not to me, he wasn't. He just said it kind of like matter-of-factly.
But that's when he started becoming distant, right?
The distant thing kind of started after he came back from college.
Okay.
It kind of progressed.
But after his breakup, he started twisting his hair, right?
Yes.
And he started not keeping up with his appearance, right?
Yes.
And you noticed those changes in his grooming started about that time, right?
Yes.
And he came back from Wilmington in 2016, is that right?
I believe so.
Nothing further, thank you, Judge.
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, do you have questions for this witness? I see at least one hand. I'm going to ask you the question between the jury to answer. In the fight between Larry and Elias, who was the aggressor?
Elias.
Martin, questions on the juror's question?
No, Your Honor.
Steve?
And that fight was because Elias thought that Larry wasn't taking care of your son, correct?
I'm sorry.
That fight was because Elias thought that Larry wasn't taking care of your son, right?
He wanted him to do more with him, like take him to like practices, and he said just start doing more stuff with him.
Nothing further, Judge.
Ms. Martin?
Nothing.
Ladies and gentlemen, further questions for this witness? I don't see any hands on that. And they said there, thank you. Can she be released from her subpoena?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Judge.
All right. If somebody else would get in before lunch? Okay, let me call you next.
Defense calls Elliahs Dorsey.
please tell the jurors who you are and how you spell your name?
I'm Deontay Dorsey. I'm Elliahs Dorsey, younger brother. It's spelled D'*A*N*T*E. Last name's D-O-R-S-E-Y.
Thank you, Judge. Deontay, what do you do for a living?
I'm a licensed social worker with the United States Department of Veteran Affairs.
And are you currently married?
Yes.
And how long have you been married?
Be 5 years in October.
Do you have any children?
Yes, I have 2. 3 and 6 months.
And I want to just start by asking you a little bit about your educational background. Did you attend IPS 14?
Yes.
Attend with Elliahs?
Yes, I did.
And did you then also, where did you go to junior high? Was it Shortridge?
Yep, Shortridge Magnet Middle School.
And Elliahs was a year ahead of you, correct?
Yes, for the time being.
But then he was held back a year?
Yes.
And I believe that was in the 8th grade?
Yes, we started 8th grade. When I started 8th grade, we was in the same grade.
And from there, you went to Arlington?
Yes.
Were you always then, from that point on, in terms of high school, in the same grade?
Yes.
Did you play football in high school?
Yes, all 4 years.
Were you a starter?
Yes, all 4 years.
Was Elliahs also a starter?
Yes, all 4 years.
Was your father one of the coaches at Arlington?
Yes, all 4 years.
And when you graduated from Arlington, were you the valedictorian of your class?
Yes.
Where did you go to college?
Manchester University in North Manchester, Indiana.
Did you play football at Manchester?
Yes, all 4 years.
Were you a starter?
Yes, all 4 years.
I want to just ask you a couple questions. When you were younger, did you and your family live for a time on Guilford Street?
Yes, 2837 North Guilford Avenue.
And can you kind of briefly describe what that neighborhood is like to the jurors when you lived there?
Yes, so my perception of it, everybody has a different perception, but it wasn't the best neighborhood as a young kid growing up. There's violence, you can see drugs present, and at one point in time, there was a body in the dumpster behind us, so it wasn't the best neighborhood, but we had some protective factors in place that made it manageable.
And fair to say some of those protective factors were your mom and dad.
Oh, yes, the biggest protective factors, and us as siblings.
Starting with your mom and dad, could you just briefly explain what they did to keep you and your brothers out of that trouble in that neighborhood?
Of course, they always kept us busy in school, sports. They always, even after, made us volunteer at certain places. So once we aged out of the youth league, our dad let us go back and coach to help the younger kids. So they both really just helped us stay busy, like not be into any trouble or anything like that.
There's been some testimony from your dad about coaching. Did you also assist your dad in coaching in the youth league?
Very briefly, not as extensive as Elliahs.
And between, would it be fair to say that Elliahs was much more involved in that over a period of time, longer period of time, and more extensively than you or your brother, older brother?
Oh, a lot more, yes.
And just moving back to another question about Guilford. When you guys lived on Guilford, did you know somebody named Marcus Shotwell?
Yes, he was our neighborhood best friend.
What happened to Marcus Shotwell?
I believe in 2007 and 2008, he was shot and killed. I don't really know the circumstances around it, but I remember reading that he was shot through the door at his girlfriend's apartment.
The other thing we talked about football, obviously football was an important part in your family's life. Was also kind of a regular outing for you and your dad and your brothers going to the target range.
Oh, absolutely.
And are you licensed? Do you have a permit to carry?
Yes, I do. I got my lifetime license to carry.
So was it something that you and your brothers regularly did as, again, kind of family activity to go out to the shooting range?
Yes, sir.
And so it would be, it's not unusual for you or your dad or Elias to have a gun for that.
Oh, no. Not at all.
Okay. And I want to show you a photo. I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as defendant's view. Take a look at that. Do you recognize that?
Yes, it's the crown. Sorry.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of when that photo was taken?
Yes.
Move to admit you.
I'm sorry, any objection to you?
No, Judge.
All right, we'll show you admitted without objection.
And does Deontay and you see you here?
Yes, I'm in the black and blue.
And where is Elias?
Next to me in the orange and salmon, and white and salmon.
Where was this photo taken?
Out front of our house at 5443 Mark Lane in Rapids, Indiana, 46226. And fourth floor.
And this is when you guys were in Arlington?
Yes.
And is this, what year in high school was this?
Our senior year, so in 2012.
So I want to ask you a little bit more about football. I mean, you played, is it fair to say you started playing when you were 5 or 6 years old?
5.
5. And this is full contact.
Yes, sir.
And so you played from 5 through the end of your college years. Can you estimate how many years you played football?
16.
What position did you play?
Center.
And fair to say you were always a starter?
Yes.
And I mean, for you, particularly in high school, can you describe what it was like being a football athlete in high school?
I think it was great. We played, practiced hard, played harder. It was, some years we didn't have a lot of numbers, so myself and Elias, we used to play both ways. He would play offensive guard right next to me. I think the junior, senior year of high school, and also middle linebacker. I would play center and nose guard. So we always stay in the game usually the whole time. He also played special teams.
It's a lot of work, would that be fair to say?
It's a lot of work.
And a lot of interaction between you and Elias as a result of that.
Yep. Yes.
And when you went to Manchester playing at college, fair to say school and then practice on top of that is a significant number.
Yes, it's almost the equivalent of a full-time job.
Full-time job. Seeing Elias and seeing how he played football and his reaction to playing football, do you think that it would be difficult for him to stop playing?
Absolutely.
When you went away to Manchester, you didn't have as much contact, at least face-to-face contact, as you had with Elias when you were in high school or in junior high.
Yeah, to seeing him every day, to seeing him maybe once a week when he come up for my games.
Okay. And I mean, all of you, all the brothers were close. Is that
Oh, very close.
But would it be correct that you and Elias seeing each other more regularly, playing football together more regularly on a day-to-day basis, probably even bonded more?
Oh, yeah. And we're closer in age. So.
based upon what you know of Elias, do you think the separation is difficult?
Objection, Judge, calls for speculation. He's asking for him.
That they were no longer seeing each other on a regular basis?
He can answer that.
He's asking him to opine about the defendant's feelings about separation, Judge. He's not asking about his own opinion.
I think it's within his common knowledge. He can answer.
Yes, it's difficult.
I mean, you being there for him, I mean, were you ready to provide support for him when he needed it?
No, when I was, I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me rephrase that. That's got a bad, poorly phrased question. When you were in high school, seeing each other regularly, I mean, if you sensed he needed any help, would you be there for him?
Oh, absolutely. He can just walk 2 steps to my room.
Right. That's something that didn't exist once you went to Manchester. And then after Manchester, did you come back and live in Indianapolis?
For about a little under a year.
Okay. And actually, was one of your jobs when you were here working as a corrections officer over at CCA, the Marion County Jail too?
Yes. Once I graduated Manchester, that was my first job out.
In fact, one of your goals was to work for the FBI.
Yes.
But, so you came back for about a year, and then did you move down to where you currently live?
Yes, I did.
And then, where is that?
In Jeffersonville, Indiana.
So, continued to have contact with Elias, but it was more of a long distance type of relationship.
Yes.
Did you know Bianca Davis?
Yes.
Who did you know Bianca Davis to be?
Elias, my brother's girlfriend.
Okay. When did they meet?
In the summer of 2012.
And would this have been at a United Water internship program?
Yes.
And tell the jurors a little bit about what the United Water internship program is.
So originally, from 2011, before, it was only open to Arlington students. It was for an opportunity for us to get job experience in a real workplace for a month at United Water, which is the wastewater treatment plant. So Elias, he worked out in the field, I think, cleaning the sewers or something along that line. I was in the warehouse, and then the next summer, they opened up to all schools across Indianapolis, so including Ben Davis, Warren, and we were the only two to be welcomed back. So basically, we were the only two to be welcomed back to that program from Arlington.
And it was in this internship program that Elias met Bianca Davis.
Yes.
So that was 2012. So basically, Elias and Bianca Davis were together for until this maybe 7-8 years.
Yes.
And would she would you see her with Elias when the times that the two got together?
Yes.
Would she, I mean, if there were holidays, would it be uncommon for her to be at your house?
I don't know.
So you knew her pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And did you receive a text message from her the day before this incident occurred?
Yes, I did.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as defendant's S. You recognize that text? Do you recognize S?
Yes.
Is that the text message you received?
Yes, it is.
And was it a group text?
Yes.
So it was sent to you, and I believe your brother Larry, correct?
Yes.
Based upon what you know of Bianca and reading what was in that text, did it concern you?
100%. Yes.
Did you plan to contact your brother Elias about what she had said in that text?
Yes, I'll try to contact him the next day.
But by that time, this incident had already occurred?
I think it was occurring,
It was occurring.
or had occurred.
Since the incident, and kind of reflecting back on Elias's behavior prior to the incident. Do you now kind of recognize some unusual things?
Yes, I did.
Can you describe for the juror what those are?
So increased paranoia, fidgeting, basically staring out into space. I can count one instance when I was back home. So this is right before I left to live where I'm living now. He heard his car just like randomly shut outside, and he hurried to the window and looked out for about 10 minutes, thinking there was something out there, but it was just a car.
Did you notice any changes in his physical appearance?
Yes, and he became very thin. Yeah.
Have you had contact with him since the incident?
Yes.
He's called you from the prison?
Yes, about almost quite often.
Quite often. If a call doesn't get through to you, and then he is able to get through to you, can you describe how he acts or what his response is?
He's usually really worried. He thinks something has happened to me, or that something's been going on. He can't really get hold of me.
I don't believe I have any other questions, Judge. Yes, Judge, briefly.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dorsey.
And
Now, you mentioned that your family growing up, it was a close-knit family, correct?
yes,
And your parents did a great job in being involved in your activities and your brother's activities. Is that accurate?
yes,
And you were close to your brother, the defendant in this case, growing up, and you still are, is that right?
yes,
And you love him, he's your brother, right?
yes,
And when meeting with people associated with your brother's case, you have admitted that your memory is really bad, is that correct?
in some parts, yes,
And you've also stated that you've had a hard time recalling many things, is that right?
the points that's not, yes, sometimes,
And you are the younger brother of the defendant, correct?
yes,
However, starting in 8th grade, you were both in the same grade in middle school and then in high school, is that correct?
yes,
And you graduated together, is that right?
yes,
And then after high school, you went to Manchester College, is that correct?
Manchester University,
Manchester University, sorry. You went there, correct?
yes,
And you played football there.
yes,
And it's a Division III football program, is that right?
yes,
And in the NCAA, there are different divisions. Division I is the highest, right?
yes,
And then Division II, that's in the middle.
yes,
And then Division III is the bottom, correct?
Yep.
And when you played at Arlington, what class of football did you play there?
it varied year,
Right. And one of the years it was 1A, correct?
yes,
Right. And that's the lowest. There's 6 classes in high school football. The highest is 6A, and 1A is the lowest, correct?
it's classified based on your school size,
Right. But Class 1A is the lowest, correct?
yes,
And when you play in 1A, you play against very small schools, correct?
in some circumstances,
And so, the defendant, he didn't attend Manchester University with you, correct?
no,
And as a result, you kind of went your separate ways after, once you went off to Manchester, with the exception to breaks when you would come back to home, right?
yes,
And then, as a result of that, you feel that you've been less available to observe the defendant's behavior. Would that be accurate?
I don't feel I know I was less available.
I'm sorry?
I-
Oh, you know, yes. You know you were less available to observe the defendant's behaviors. But however, during the time that you have been around the defendant after high school, you never witnessed any outbursts by the defendant, that's correct?
Yes,
And then, you also feel that the defendant's fear or watchfulness was not abnormal based on the neighborhood that you grew up in, correct?
it is abnormal,
It is?
yes,
Okay, so when you met with people associated with the defense, when you said you did not feel that it was abnormal, that would be incorrect, what they reflected?
which point in time are we talking about?
Right. So I'll show you the notes from that meeting. It was actually on 6/28/20. And a summary of that meeting. I'm showing you here 3B. And tell me if that inaccurately reflected what you told me. Yes. Okay, so you feel as though his constant fear and watchfulness was not abnormal based on the neighborhood that you grew up in, correct?
To a certain extent.
Okay. So, right. And you also did not feel that your brother owning or wearing a bulletproof vest was a sign of paranoia, correct?
No.
So you felt that that's not a sign of paranoia, wearing a bulletproof vest, correct?
I didn't know he wore it. I know he owned it.
Right, but you told the defense team that you felt that that was not a sign of paranoia, wearing a bulletproof vest.
I said it was not abnormal
Well,
to own it.
I just want to make sure that the notes they took is accurate and reflects accurately what you said. Right here on C, you can read that full thing. I just want to make sure that.
I believe it's not abnormal. That's what.
And it says also that you didn't feel as though it was him showing paranoia, correct?
Is that? Yeah.
That's what it says? Okay. So that's what they reflected as you believing when they met with you, correct?
In 2020.
Right. So in the past, so since 2020, up to the day of trial now, when you're testifying, you've changed your stance?
No.
Okay. So
But
back in
since then, I
2020 and
also-
still today, you didn't feel as though it's a sign of paranoia,
But
correct?
also, I received more education since that point. I received my master's degree in social work.
Okay.
So if I could go back and reflect, I can see things differently.
And as a social worker, you've taken the time to evaluate your brother, is that right?
Sometimes.
You haven't been called as an expert in this case, you've been called as a family member, correct?
Yes.
So you're changing your answer from 2020?
No, sir.
Okay, just want to make sure. And you have no knowledge of the defendant ever using drugs, correct?
No.
And if the defendant was using drugs, he would have been hiding that from you and your family, is that right?
I don't know.
Well, if you don't have knowledge and he was using, then you would have been hiding it from you, correct?
Yes.
And in 2019, around the holidays, the defendant actually came and visited you and your wife, is that correct?
Yes, Christmas time.
And you thought it was odd that he left your house and was gone for about an hour somewhere outside, is that correct?
Yes.
And was your brother Larry Sr. also there at that time? Visiting?
Yes.
He was,
Well,
right?
Larry.
Larry Jr., I'm sorry, I apologize. Your brother Larry Jr.
Yes, he was.
Right. And you all thought it was odd that he left, correct?
Yes.
And at that point in time, Larry Jr. realized what he was out doing, correct?
I'm not sure what he was aware of.
Okay. And then finally, doing that internship for those 2 years and going to Arlington High School, you knew Aisha Brown, is that right?
Can you classify when you say new?
Well, you were familiar with her, you went to high school with her.
No,
is that
sir.
right? You did not go to high school with Aisha Brown at Arlington?
I did, but I did not really know her.
Okay. You went to high school with her, but she did the internship with y'all too, correct?
Oh, I don't know.
You don't recall her being there at the internship?
For 20, what
I'm sorry.
year?
When Arlington did the internship the first year.
I'm not sure.
Fair enough. No further questions, Judge. You do that.
I just want to give you a chance to clarify some of what the prosecutor just asked you. You talked about the fact that you have more knowledge now.
Yes.
Can you explain to the jurors what you mean by that?
So part of going through the education, learn about risk factors, warning signs, protective factors, things along that line. I had no knowledge of any like type of warning signs before I started going to school. Now when I look back and reflect, I can see the warning signs were there, but I could not identify them at the time.
And when you said going back to school, this is the school that you studied to get your master's degree.
Yes, Indiana Wesleyan.
And based upon those classes that you took to get a master's degree, now reflecting back on what you saw, you do recognize those as being risk factors, or not risk factors, but warning signs.
Yes.
And when you testified on direct, that's what you were talking about.
Yes.
Let me also ask you this. I mean, the prosecutor asked me some questions about football and the rankings. You played football for a long period of time. You were a center. I mean, that's a position that involves a lot of physical contact.
Yes.
Is that correct? A lot of hard hits.
Yes.
And you talked about at Arlington, there were times because of shortage of players, Elliahs would play on the line with you.
Yes.
Again, a position where there's a lot of physical contact, a lot of hard hits.
Yes.
And then Elliahs also played the position primarily middle linebacker.
Yes.
And I mean, fair to say that's a position that involves somebody putting their head in, making a hard hit to make a stop.
Yeah.
Would it, I mean, when you were in high school, I mean, would you ever want to come out of the game?
Absolutely not.
Would Elliahs ever want to come out?
Objection calls for speculation.
Well,
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
okay. Did you ever see Elliahs volunteer get out of the game?
And no.
Even if you were hurt, would you want to get out of the game?
No.
If you saw Elliahs hurt, did you ever see him volunteer to get out of the game?
No.
No further questions, Judge.
Further cross?
Yes, Judge. So, defense emphasized your training now, but obviously you didn't have that training back in 2019, correct?
No.
So now in retrospect, after being trained, you said there are certain warning signs, correct?
Yes.
So as the reasonable person who has no specific training in this area, that's what you felt, right, back in 2019?
I'm sorry, really, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, as a reasonable person, common person without any specific training, that's what you thought back in 2019, correct?
Yes.
And then finally, when defense talks about, and defense has done this with a couple witnesses when they talk about football, putting your head into things. You're an experienced football player. You played quite a few years. Was there ever a coach that taught you that was the proper way to play football? To duck your head and throw your head into things?
Can I answer this with the statement?
Sure.
Well, when it's 4th and goal,
Yeah.
4 minutes left, sometimes training does not occur.
Right. But what I'm saying is, that's not how you talk.
Yeah, that's not how you talk, but
Right.
you can't really do everything you're taught.
That's accurate. But the more you're taught and the better that you're taught, it sometimes becomes ingrained to use the proper technique, correct?
Sometimes.
Right. And you were always taught properly, correct?
Well, I played center.
Right. And you were always taught properly. And you played defense as well, correct?
Yeah, and I didn't use the techniques I should have.
Right,
at the time.
but you were always taught properly. The coaches taught you properly.
Yeah, as a player, sometimes you don't.
Thank you.
Just briefly, so just to point out, in the heat of the game, you may have to use techniques or may have to use an approach that maybe isn't fundamental, but get the job done.
Do what you need to do to get the stop.
That's all, Judge.
One final, Judge. And you were valedictorian of your high school, correct?
Valedictorian, yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? Ladies and gentlemen, do you have questions for this witness? I see a couple hands. How often were you and Elias communicating in the months leading up to April of 2020?
In the months leading up to starting from which point?
I'm sorry?
Starting from which point?
On the months leading up to April 2020, which would be this incident.
Many times a week.
Would that have been by video, phone call, or text message primarily?
Text, FaceTime. Not really calling.
And due to having your social worker background, do you feel that prior to April the 9th when this incident occurred, that your brother needed some type of assistance or help?
Yes.
And based on your personal knowledge, at the time of his behavior changing, did you feel that he could have been on drugs?
No.
Did you? So Next question is probably the same then. You feel that he could have been on anything more than marijuana or weed?
No.
Was there ever a family discussion on his changed behavior? If not the entire family, at least with your brother Larry?
No. We'll talk on this.
Questions on jurors, questions, defense?
No.
Questions on jurors, questions, state?
No, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, further questions for this witness? All right. Don't see any hands on that, sir. You may step down. May be excused for subpoena.
Yes.
Yes, Judge.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's now 12:30, almost 12:30. Time for us to take a lunch break. Again, it's not quite 12:30. If you can be back here at 1:45. We'll continue on with the evidence this afternoon. And again, you know I'm going to tell you, you're not the former express opinion about the guilt or innocence of the defendant. You've heard all of the evidence, the argument of counsel, the court's final instructions. You may discuss this case amongst yourselves, provided that you're all together in the jury room and you don't go through the ultimate question of guilt or innocence. If anyone does try to talk to you about this case, you must report that to the court immediately. Have a good lunch, and we'll be here in about an hour. All rise. Please be seated. Record should reflect that jurors have left the room administratively before we break for lunch. Steve? No, Judge. All right, we'll see everybody at quarter till 2.
We go to